Monaco, the home of the rich and the famous. Monte Carlo has a famous F1 race where the Principality comes alive, but it also is home to one of France's most successful football clubs. 8 Ligue 1 titles, 5 Coupe de France's, former players such as Henry, Falcao and Mbappe. Sadly though, unable to compete with PSG financially, the club lost its brightest asset. It's time to step out of the shadows as we take on 5 seasons at Monaco. Welcome to Monaco, the Principality that is the home of the rich and the famous, and is also the home of one of France's most successful football clubs, despite not actually being in France. You join me on day one of the job at AS Monaco. We're going to spend 5 seasons in charge at Monaco and see what success we can bring to the club as we look to try and catch and overtake PSG in French football. Starting off on the information page, we can see that the media predict us to finish in 3rd place in the first season. They were founded in 1924 and have fierce rivals which are Nice. Looking at the club history, they have won 8 Ligue 1 titles and 5 Coupe de France's. Let's go forward and check out the starting 11 that we will inherit at the start of the game. Now, this tactic looks a little bit crazy. It's basically a 5-2-3, and it's a tactic that we're going to try and take on in the first season, certainly, and we're going to run with it as long as we can. However, I do feel that this tactic is slightly crazy in terms of some of the positions that we're going to need. But if we look at the starting 11, it actually is a decent squad on paper. So they've got Cohn in goal, you've got Caio Henrique, Salisu, Maripan, Matsima and Vanderson as a back 5, Zakaria and Fofana as the middle 2. Then you've got Golovin, Minamino and Ben Yedder up top. If we have a little look at some of the players, we have Ben Yedder, obviously one of the most famous players at the club. He's a striker, 32 years old. Pretty much going to be leaning on him in the first season. Contract does run out at the end of the season though, so if we can't afford to give him those £130,000 a week, there is a chance we could lose him in the first season. Then on to the Russian, Golovin. He's an attacking midfielder or can play on the left. He's one of those players that once again we will be leaning on early on in the save, and I think he's a linchpin of the club. Then former Liverpool player Takumi Minamino, he's another one that can play through the centre or can play from the left. He's dependable and reliable, 28 years old. In the middle we have Zakaria, former player I believe of Chelsea and Juventus. He's decent enough and one that at £20 to £22 million, if there was an offer to come in, I have to admit I would consider taking it. Long term, at the age of 26, there are a few players in the middle of the park that I would like to go and sign that are a little bit younger. Next to him is Fofana, 24 years old, plays as a defensive midfielder or a central midfielder. And then you've got the Brazilian Caio Henrique at left back and another Brazilian, Vanderson, at right back. We have former Southampton player Mohamed Salisu as a centre back. We have Maripan alongside him, the Chilean. And to round off the back 3 is Matsima. In goal, we have Philip Cohn, so a player that I think is reliable. Swiss player valued at £12.5 to £13.5 million. So we'll probably not need to look at goalkeeper in the first season, but certainly going forwards, this squad does seem to have a lot of ageing players, although they do have a very good youth system. The other thing to note is going forwards, even though I will try and use this tactic, there'll be no transfers in the first transfer window. Let's go forwards and see what is expected of us from the club board. So the board culture is sign players under the age of 22 for the future. Just noted that they do have quite an ageing squad, so that is one thing we will look to check off pretty quickly. They want to sign players to sell for a profit, sign young players to develop for a profit, and work within the wage budget. So all 3 of those should be pretty easy. In terms of the end of the current season, qualify for the Champions League, reach the latter stages of the Coupe de France, become the most recognised as the best of the rest, and then contract renewal, continue to be recognised as best of the rest going forward. I think we can do a little bit better than best of the rest. I really do think we have a good shot of breaking certainly into the top 6, if not the top 4. Let's have a look then at what the club vision and the supporter culture is. So develop players using the club's youth system, as I did say when we was looking at that first team 11, they do have a good youth system at Monaco and have that history of bringing players through. They want to become recognised as the best of the rest, and they want to finish above Nice in the league. So we know what is expected of us from the supporters and the board. We've seen the starting 11 and the tactic we'll be using. Let's see how we get on in Season 1. To kick off Season 1's review, we're going to start off with the transfers and show you everything that's happened in the transfer market. Now, as I mentioned in the little intro there, we had no transfers in the first transfer window. We only did our business in January in Season 1. So all of these transfers you're about to see would have happened in the winter transfer window. So by the time we got to the transfer window, it became very apparent very quickly that Monaco actually aren't as rich and as famous as we thought they were. They obviously are a famous football club, but the money was in short supply, so it meant that I had to start selling players before I could start to rebuild this team. So the first player that left the club was Vanderson. We managed to get £18 million for him. He has gone back to Brazil to play for Flamengo. The next player to leave was Myron Boadu. He's a player that long term I actually would have liked to have kept, but a bid came in from Corinthians for £10 million. I thought that was a decent amount of money, and we decided to move him on. And the final player to leave in Season 1 was Denis Zakaria. You may have heard me mention just that if a bid came in, we would look at it. Real Sociedad offered us £30 million for him, and we decided that was exactly what we were looking for and would give us the right amount of money to not only strengthen the squad in this season, but going forward. The other thing, if you remember, was that the board and the supporters wanted us to start signing younger players and phasing out some of the older players. And the first transfer that we brought in was Goncalo Souza. He is a 17-year-old striker, play off of the right wing, and he has come from Porto. Now, you're going to notice a little bit of a theme going on here. In this first season, we decided to raid some of the best Portuguese talent that we could. So the next player to come in was Dario Esugo. He's possibly one of my favourite wonder kids in this game. I've signed him for the past couple of years, and once again, I've gone out and splashed the cash to buy him. The next player to come in was Daniel Bragança. He's one that I've signed in previous football managers as well. He's dependable and reliable in the middle of the park, and even though he might not be a first teamer, he'll definitely be reliable when he's called upon, even if it's just as a rotation piece. The next player to come in is João Rego. He is a wonder kid who can play off of either side of the pitch, left wing, right wing, through the centre, can also cover as a striker. We only had to pay something like £8 million for him, and instantly his value has skyrocketed, and he has had a bit of a bedding in season, but he's certainly one that looks positive for the future. The final player to come in Season 1 was to replace Vanderson. He's a Brazilian, he's Weverton, and he has come from Ponte Preta. Only had to pay around £1 million for him, so it's an absolute bargain. We already have one or two right backs, but with selling Vanderson, it left us a little bit short at right back, so he was the replacement that we decided to go out and buy. So those are the players that have left quite a big hole. We then started to build the team. Can those players have the impact we were looking for in Season 1? In the first season, Monaco would have the benefit of not having to play in a lot of tournaments. In fact, we only played in 2 competitions, the first of which was the Coupe de France. Now, if you remember, they wanted us to be competitive in this. We joined in the 9th round, where we would beat Anansi 2-0. In the 10th round, we would be paired up with Dunkirk. We would go on and beat them 4-1. In the 11th round, we would play against Lille. We absolutely demolished them, beating them 5-0. To go through to the quarterfinals, where we played Montpellier, we beat them 3-2. Then on to the semi-finals, where we would play against Lens. We beat them 3-1. And finally, into the final, where we would play against PSG. And sadly, we would lose 3-0. Have a little look at that final just to show you how it went. Nothing really went our way, and we were completely outplayed. No real problems with that one. So that meant the only other competition that we would play in Season 1 was Ligue 1, and we would finish the season in 3rd place, qualifying for the Champions League. So our season campaign would finish with 34 games played, 21 wins, 8 draws, 5 losses, a goal difference of 40, and we finished on 71 points. Now, to put that into perspective, we would finish 22 points behind PSG, who were champions. So certainly in the first season, that is the gap we are looking to bridge. But we did also finish 4 points behind Lens, but we did finish 6 points ahead of Nice, which was quite good for us. So our first season qualifying for the Champions League is definitely a positive step forwards. Looking at some of the player stats, we didn't have a standout goal scorer. In the average ratings, we didn't have a player in the top 3 there either. Caio Henrique did get 12 assists. He also got 6th player in the match awards, so a decent season for him. So, to round up the competitions then, we finished as runners-up in the Coupe de France, and we also would go on and qualify for the Champions League, finishing 3rd in the Ligue 1. A look at the finances then as we head into Season 2 shows that the actual club finances are pretty poor. They have an overall balance of minus £5 million, but they do give us a transfer budget of £15.6 million. So once again, we're going to get into that whole debate of whether we should spend the £15.6 million and not think of the consequence, or if we just be a bit more reserved, try and raise some more funds and then spend whatever's available. In terms of the wage budget, quite generous with £880,000, and we're only spending £767,000. If we go to the club vision and have a look at how we're getting on in terms of the board and the supporters, our job security is secure. Our actionable objectives are to work within the wage budget. We're on course. Maximum 1-year contracts for over 32s, maximum 2-year contracts now for over 30s, minimum 4-year contracts for first team players. By the end of the season, they want to be competitive in the Champions League and qualify for the Europa League at a minimum. Looking at the feedback, we get a B- from the board. They say they are pleased with the management of the team and last season's successes remain fresh in the memories and factor into that appraisal. Looking at the board cultures, sign players under the age of 23 for the first team. They're reserving judgment. Notable highlights: pleased with the 3-1 win against Lyon, pleased with the 4-0 dismantling of Lille, and they are pleased with the positive atmosphere in the changing room, but they are disappointed about the Coupe de France final as we lost to PSG. Looking at the supporters then, we get a B- from the supporters. Develop players using the club's youth system, finish above Nice in the league, so we are doing both of those. Pleased with the 4-0 win against Lille, pleased with the 3-1 victory against Lyon, and 4-1 victory against Montpellier. And once again, the supporters were disappointed with the cup final against PSG. Still though, first season to get Bs is a very good score, and I think that it's good feedback going into Season 2. To round out the first season, we are going to have a look at the first team squad. Now, I'm going to do this in 2 different ways. Firstly, I'm going to show you the best 11 that I think I have going into Season 2. We will then go and look at the assistant's best 11, and we'll also have a look at his report to see if there's any gaps and any weaknesses that we need to fill. So to kick things off with my best 11, I would go with Cone in goal, Salisu, Matsima and Maripan as the back 3, Caio Henrique on the left, Singo on the right, then Asugo and Fofana as my midfield 2, Golovin on the left, Rigo on the right and Ben Yedder at the top of the pitch. I think they've been absolutely sound in terms of the way that we are set up. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of the tactic, but it does seem to have done them well. Looking at Wissam Ben Yedder, I did allude to it at the start of the episode. He has turned us down and he's going to go and join Marseille on the 1st of July. So disappointed that we couldn't retain him. But in terms of his season, he did actually do okay, despite the fact he sulked a little bit because he couldn't get his contract before eventually deciding to leave. He had 34 appearances with 14 goals and 3 assists. Looking at Joe Rago, he came into the team and, like I said, it was kind of a bedding in period for him. He played in 12 games, scored 3 goals, and overall he played 11 with 4 more substitute appearances and got 7 goals in the first season. Golovin, playing from the left, had a very good season. He played 32 times, scoring 9 goals, had 8 assists, and overall he played 36 and scored 10 goals. He has played in a number of positions. We either play him here on the wide left, or he can play in one of these 2 slots as either a midfielder or a defensive midfielder. Segundo Volante does seem to suit him a bit more than this position here. He's probably not a natural at it, but we still like to get him into those positions when we can. And then Dario Asugo, as I said, one of my favourite wonder kids, paid £4.9 million for him. I think we bought him in January, so he only played 11 games. He scored 2 goals. Overall, he played 13 and scored those 2 goals. And he's developing nicely into the type of footballer that I really think that defensive midfielder is built around. 5'11", strong player with good passing, can break up plays and wreck games for the opposition. As I said, we did stick with the tactic. It's not my favourite one. It might have to change going forwards, but we certainly have stuck it out the first season. We'll see where we go with that. The other thing to do then is go into the squad planner and see what our assistant's best 11 is. So our assistant manager is Mr. Yap Stam. Might have heard of him. He would go with goalkeeper Cone, then Maripan, Matsima and Salisu. Same 3, just different order. Keo Enrique, Fofana, Kamara and Singo. So he wants to go with the experience rather than trying to throw in Asugo. Then he has Minamino wide left, Mbolo wide right and Balogun up top. Now, Bril Mbolo started the season injured. He then got re-injured, so he hasn't really played much football, haven't really given him too many chances. And Balogun was complaining early on that he wasn't getting into the team, so he's another one that I think, if the right kind of offer come along, I really would seriously consider taking it. And then we've got Giancarlo Souza in behind him. We've got Rego on the left, Sugo also in those purple players. So we know we're going in the right direction in terms of the youth. Looking at our assistant report then, so some of the strengths: low level of eccentricity in the goalkeepers. Player partnership between Ben Yedder and Mbolo has been good. Player partnership between Golovin and Mbolo has been good. There are a number of youth prospects, so there is a whole list of players there. They really do have a good youth system at Monaco. Then the other things are rushing out tendency and best player form, which is Keo Enrique, which I don't think you can see right at the bottom of the page. There are a few others, but we won't go into too many of them. The biggest weaknesses are heading, communication, stamina, defensive depth, overall depth, long shots, penalties, kicking, positioning and teamwork. So a few of them. Defensive depth we're going to look at possibly in season 2, depending on what happens with that money in the transfers. And then overall depth, we're going to need to start packing the squad out as best we can. So that's pretty much a roundup of how season 1 has gone. I think it's been a successful season in terms of qualifying for the Champions League. We got close to winning the Coupe de France, but just were no match for PSG in that either. So a long way to go, a big bridge to PSG, but I do think it's a task that we can get on with in season number 2. To kick off episode number 2, we're going to look at all of the transfers that happened in season 2, kicking off with the players that have left the club. Now, at the end of the first episode, you might have seen that I was talking about following Balogun, about the way he was moaning and edging for a move away from the club, and that's exactly what happened. He, at the end of the season, put in a transfer request. We kind of had to shop him about a bit. There wasn't too much interest, but finally Norwich came in with a sensible offer of around £27 million, and off he went to England. The next player to leave was Guillermo Maripan. Now again, he's a player who was in my original back 3 for this season, but Al Riyadh come in with a bid. We decided to take that. They offered around £12.5 million for him. The next player to leave was Bril Mbolo, another one that I was talking about that really was injured and then couldn't get into the team. There was a bid from the Middle East that came in of £35 million, and when you saw the finances and how they looked at the end of season 1, we were always going to take that deal. And the final player to leave was Philip Cone, so there's going to be a lot of changes at the back. Our number 1 goalkeeper departs to go to Linz, so it meant that we had amassed quite a transfer kitty. I think we were up to about £80 million at one point, and we started to put that back into the playing squad. One of the big weaknesses from the previous season was that we didn't have enough squad depth, so we tried to address that quickly. The first player that I brought in was Armin Gigovic. He is a Swedish player who has come from Midtjylland. We only paid around £9 million for him, so it seems a bit of a bargain. Not 100% sure he'll be a true first teamer, but he's definitely one as a rotation option. The next player to come in definitely will be a first teamer. It's Mr. Rooney Bargy. We paid sensible amounts of money for him. It was only about £12 to £15 million. And when you look at his value now, it was a very sensible option to take up. He's a player who develops into one of the best wonder kids in the game and has really been a player that caught my attention since the previous FM. The next player is Alexander Schlager. So with our number one goalkeeper departing, we needed another number one goalkeeper, and we actually went to Austria, which is strange because that's where Cohn went. We went to Red Bull Salzburg and we picked up Alexander Schlager. The next player to come in was Jesus Vallejo. He is a defender who is solid and reliable, former Real Madrid player. It says he's a regular starter in his prime years. So at the age of 28, he's that experienced head in and amongst the younger players that will be coming into the club in that position. We then signed Kenneth Schmidt. He is one of those younger players who plays in that position. He has come to us from Freiburg. He was actually quite a cheap option. I think we only paid about £2.5 million for him, and I think he's very much one who will develop in the future. We then signed John Karikaburu, so we were a little bit light up front, having lost Mbolo and Balogun, so we went and signed some strikers, the first of which was Karikaburu. He has been a player who has been a wonder kid in previous football managers, and we decided to take a relatively cheap punt on him, around £4 million. It really wasn't a lot of money. We then signed Robert Bozanic. He's a player who cost around £8.5 to £9 million, I think. Came from Boavista, had previously played for Feyenoord, 25 years old, stands at 6'2", finishing at 16, pace of only 12 and acceleration of 12. Hopefully he can score some goals whilst playing up front at the club. And the final player to come in the second season is Anthony Rouault. He's a player who comes to us from Stuttgart, a French 23-year-old central defender who I think is still going to improve. He looks the part already, valued now at £24 to £26 million, and seems to be an absolute steal. So those are the players that have left, the players that have arrived. The question is, what impact do they have? Can we get any closer to PSG in Season 2? Let's have a look at some competitions. To kick off the roundup of competitions in Season 2, we're going to start off with the Coupe de France. We always enter this competition in the 9th round, and this time we were paired off against Ajaccio. We would beat them 4-1. In the 10th round, we would play against Troyes, where we had a disappointing 0-0 draw, but we would go through winning on penalties. In the 11th round, we would be drawn against one of our fierce rivals, Nice. We would beat them 2-1, and that would put us through to the quarter-finals, where we would play against Strasbourg. Unfortunately, another game where we would struggle, only drawing 1-1 in the match, but unfortunately, we would go out on penalties. In season number 2, we would play in the Champions League for the first time, and the Champions League is now all changed. Gone is the group stages, in is the league phases, and unfortunately the league phase would be as far as we would go in the competition. We didn't play particularly well and seemed a little bit out of our depth, but we did play 8 times. We would win 2 games against Rapid and Limassol. We would draw twice against Real Madrid in a 1-1 draw and Partizan Belgrade, but we would lose 4 times to Leipzig, Manchester United, Ajax and Celtic. We'd finish on a goal difference of 2, and we would finish on 8 points. So that just leaves us with the league to look at, and as you can see, we have had another really good season in Ligue 1. We have managed to finish in 2nd place, albeit 17 points behind Paris Saint-Germain. We have closed the gap a little bit. It's only by 5 points, but it is progress going forwards. Looking at our season then, we played in 34 games. We would win 25 of them. We would draw in 5 games. We would lose 4 times. We'd have a goal difference of 47 and finish on 80 points. So in fairness to us, we have finished 11 points ahead of Marseille and 12 points ahead of Lens, but we do finish 17 points behind PSG, and PSG were in their imperious best, winning 32, drawing 1 and only losing 1 game in the league. But it's another season qualified for the Champions League, and another season with the kind of money hopefully coming into the club that will allow us to build a squad for the Champions League. Looking at some of the player stats then, Rooney Bargi was our top goal scorer with 21 goals. He was also our top average rated player with 7.63 and 3 from 3. Rooney Bargi was our leading assister with 15 assists. He also got 7 Player of the Match awards Golovin got 5, and Wilfried Singo did manage to get himself 10 yellow cards. So a fantastic season. Despite that gap at the top being so big, it is starting to come down. We are chipping away at it. Hopefully in season 3 we will go even closer to running PSG to the line. So a roundup of the competition sees us finishing second and qualify for the Champions League. We were knocked out sadly in the group phase, or league phase as it is now, in the Champions League, and then in the Coupe de France we'd get through to the quarter-finals where we'd lose against Strasbourg. A quick look at the finances will reveal that we are in pretty much the same situation that we were at the end of Season 1. Going into Season 3, we will have a negative balance of £5.5 million. But they do still give us an £8.4 million transfer budget. Now, obviously, as you can see by the dips and the peaks here, we were raising cash as we were going through, but then we were losing as we were going throughout the season. We have a wage budget of £990,000 and we are spending £914. So once again, it's a question of what do we do with this overall balance and this transfer budget. Certainly in how we're going to strengthen the squad, those two numbers will play a big part. In terms of the club vision then, actionable objectives from the board: work within the wage budget, we are on course. Sign players to sell for a profit, they're reserving judgment. Their maximum contracts for 32s and 30s, 4-year contracts for first team players. By the end of next season, they want to be more competitive in the Champions League and qualify for the Champions League as a minimum. Looking at the board, we only get a C+ for this season. Our job security is also stable. The reasons for that: strive to make progress on and off the pitch is the culture. They were pleased with the 3-0 victory against Marseille, the 1-0 victory against Lyon, and they're pleased with the positive atmosphere in the changing room. However, they are disappointed that we lost to Lorient. If we look at the supporters, we get a B- there, so a little bit better from them. They still want to play or develop players using the club's youth system, finish above Nice in the league, and finish above Marseille in the league also. They are pleased with the 3-0 victory, 4-1 victory and the 1-0 victory, but they are disappointed about Kenneth Schmidt's recent performances and the 1-0 defeat against Lorient. So, all in all, it's pretty decent. I'm not too sure why our job security is only stable. Yeah, it's a little bit shocking considering we have pretty much outperformed what they wanted. We have finished second in the league this season. We have closed the gap to PSG slightly, but we've also increased the gap behind us. So the feedback is a little bit harsh from the board, but we'll take the B- as we go into Season 3. To round off Season 2, we're going to look at the first team and more specifically the starting 11. So I'm going to do this in two ways. The first way, I will look at what I think is my best starting 11, and then we will also have a look at what the assistant thinks is the best 11, and we'll try and look at any gaps in his report to see where we might need to strengthen in season number 3. So my first 11 would be Schlager in goal, Kao Enrique, Salisu, Ruel and Singo, Isugo, Golovin and Kamara in the middle, with Minamino wide left, Bargy wide right and Bosnik up top. Now the first thing you're going to notice is that the dodgy 3-4-2-1 system thing has gone. We have gone back to trusty reliable 4-3-3. Certainly I think in Ligue 1 for this team it's far more suited to have a bit more stability in the middle of the park. That kind of back three just was conceding goals left, right and centre, and I think that this 4-3-3 stabilises that a bit more. So if we go through and look at some of the players then, Bosnik up top. As I said, he did come as a little bit of a bargain, £7.75 million for him. But he played 32 times, scoring 16 and had 6 assists. 36 games, 20 goals across the season. If we have a little look at Rooney Bargy, as I said, we got him. He's won for £12 million, 30 appearances, 21 goals, 15 assists, 7 Player of the Match awards, 42 and 23 goals across the season. He's one of those wonder kids that you just have to go and buy. Certainly on this game, FM23, he was a good wonder kid. In FM24, he looks like he is an elite wonder kid. In the rest of the positions, so still Minamino wide left, Golovin, Kamara, Isugo, as I said, is still developing as a footballer, and he's one of those players that will develop as the save goes on. Then Henrique, Salisu, Ruol and Singo. Let's have a little look at Ruol. So he's come in and he has played some really good first team football in his first season at the club. £8.5 million for him, 27 appearances with 3 goals. Not really important goals for a defender, but the 7.1 average rating that he received across the season is just that. If we go into the squad planner then and look at the best 11 from the assistant manager, who is still Mr. Jaap Stam, he would go with Schlager, Enrique, Vallejo, Roel and Singo. So I think only one change there, which is Vallejo. I don't think he was in my best 11. Then we got Fofana, Asugo and Gigovic. Gigovic is an interesting one because we bought him as a rotation piece. He hasn't even really made that. He's now started making waves about wanting new contracts and all sorts. So he in the moment is in the cold for me, but obviously Jaap Stam thinks that's where he should be. Then we've got Minamino wide left, Bargi wide right and Bosnik up top. So we've got Rago, Souza, Efakali as the 3 purple players there. Strange to see that with that midfield 3 there, it's Diop, Buabre, Silvente, and then we've got Elliot Ober is a player that I actually need to show you because in Football Manager 2024, I've seen this quite a lot. This was just a random 15-year-old wonder kid who was recommended on a scouting report, wasn't through a youth intake or anything. He's absolutely fantastic. He's going to develop into such a wonderful footballer, and we didn't have to pay a single penny for him. If we go back then and have a little look at that report just to see the strengths and weaknesses. So top goal scorer was Rooney Bargi, best player was Rooney Bargi. Youth prospects list has shortened, but there are still a number at the club. Handling, command of area, anticipation, concentration and goalkeeper depth are positives. In terms of the weaknesses, it's still overall depth. So even though we are raising money through transfers and spending money, they still want us to go out and spend more money and buy more players because it seems that we do not have the depth at the club. Penalty taking, communication, dribbling, heading, off the ball, one-on-ones, flair, corners and work rates. So maybe we need a bit more attacking flair. Communication between goalkeepers isn't very good, so I don't know whether that's on Schlager or if it's on the group as a whole. Penalty taking being a weakness is obviously strange considering we have 2 strikers now who should be good at penalties. So that is going to round off season number 2. We have qualified for the Champions League, close that gap to PSG. It's down to 17. That may seem quite laughable, but it's a big step forward when you don't have the money that PSG have got to just keep whacking player after player after player into your squad. Knocked out in the league phase of the Champions League, so one to improve on for the next season, and then the quarterfinals of the Coupe de France. To kick off season number 3, we're going to have a look at all of the transfer activities from season number 3. Starting off with the players that have left the club. The first of which was Giancarlo Souza. We signed him early on as a youngster, didn't have to pay big money, and he's still a player who is in development. But Milan came along with £6 million, and that was enough for us to want to go and take that kind of money. The next player to leave was Mohamed Kamara. In the previous episode, you would have seen me say that negative balance was weighing on my shoulders, and I really had to take things into my own hand. The first player that I kind of forced out of the door, he didn't really want to go, but he didn't get a choice because we needed the money, was Mohamed Kamara. He has gone to Red Bull Salzburg. We took £14 million for him. Next up was Caio Enrique. He has gone to Porto. Didn't really want to sell him, but obviously the money situation dictated that when a bid came in, he had to go. £35 million for him was enough to take him to Portugal. And finally, Youssouf Fofana has gone to Manchester City. He was subject of a £40 million bid from City. Absolute no-brainer. We were going to take it every day of the week. So as we built that transfer kitty up, we were then able to go out and start bringing in some players of real quality. The first of which was Samu Omaradian. He is a striker, Spanish, come from Atletico Madrid. He's 6'4", has pace of 16, acceleration of 14 and finishing of 15. He looks like he could be an absolute bargain. The next player to come in was Gabriel Moscardo. He's a Brazilian wonder kid who was playing at Corinthians. We had to pay around £15 million, I believe, for him, but it's an absolute steal. He walked into the first team and commanded his place straight away. The next player is Jonah Kusi Asare. He's a player that I really wanted up top. He, just like Amarodian, has got height on his side at 6'6". He has pace of 15. He has jumping reach of 17. Finishing of 13. Recently did a video on him where he came out to be like the next Zlatan Ibrahimovic in that save. So hopefully if he can do that in this save, he will be fantastic. And we only had to pay around, I think it was £12 million for him. So again, another steal considering his age and his ability. The next player to come in is Luis Gil Herme, another of those Brazilian wonder kids. Can play on the left, can play on the right, has the pace, has the acceleration, has the dribbling. Really is just going to be one that slots into the team when we need him. And the final player to come in is Amos Piper. He's a centre-back who has come to us from Werder Bremen. He's another tall player, strong player, defensively sound. It was just another piece that we added to the back line just to make sure that when the likes of Salisu are out, we have a capable replacement to step in. So those are all the transfers that have happened in season number 3. The only question is, did those players have an impact? What did we achieve in season 3? To kick off the competitions for season number 3, we would start our season in the Trophée des Champions. We would play against PSG and we would actually go and win it. It took us all of our might to get through the game. We had a 1-1 draw with a goal from Rooney Bargy, and then we would go on and win the Trophée des Champions on penalties. In the Coupe de France, once again, we would enter in the 9th round where we would play against Sochaux. We would beat them 3-2 to advance into the 10th round where we would play against Lorient. We would batter them 6-0. In the 11th round, we would face off against Rennes. We'd beat them 4-1. In the quarterfinals, we would play against Amiens and we would beat them 2-1. In the semi-finals, we'd be drawn against Lille. We would beat them 1-0, and that would set us up with a final against PSG, where once again we would fall to Paris Saint-Germain, losing 1-0 in that final. Let's show you what happened in the final. So it was a goal from Asensio that would beat us, but once again, just like the previous final we played against them, we were soundly beaten and unfortunately just couldn't get over the line to win the trophy. In the Champions League, once again, we would play in the league phase, and this time we would actually qualify to go into the playoffs. So we played 8 games. We won 3 of them against Antwerp, Manchester City and Red Bull Salzburg. We would draw 3 times against Benfica, Manchester United and Feyenoord, and we would lose twice to Leverkusen and Galatasaray. We'd have a 4-goal difference and finish on 12 points. And that was just 3 points behind Milan, who ended up qualifying in 8th place. That would put us through into the knockout playoff round, where unfortunately we would come up against Bayern Munich and they would teach us a bit of a lesson. We would lose 6-2 as we got knocked out in the playoff round of the Champions League. So that leaves us to round up the Ligue 1, and this time I can proudly say that we have won Ligue 1 for the first time, beating Paris Saint-Germain to the title by 4 points. This one feels really, really sweet. So this time around we played 34 games. We won 29 of them. We drew 3 times, including one with PSG. We lost twice to Saint Etienne and Nice, but importantly, we got a 74 goal difference and we finished on 90 points. So 4-point gap back to PSG, and we managed to put 20 points between us and Nice in 3rd and 21 points between us and Marseille in 4th. If we look at some of the stats, No standout player in terms of goals this season, but Rooney Bargy once again 7.75 average rating. He got 21 assists in a single season. He got 10 player of the match awards. Schlager kept 14 clean sheets and Schmidt got 11 yellow cards. So a fantastic campaign that was rounded off by winning the French title. So it really has been a brilliant season, number 3. We won the Trophée des Champions to kick us off. We almost made it a treble by winning the Coupe de France, but PSG got their hands on that. But we take the important one by winning Ligue 1 by 4 points from PSG. In terms of the finances going into season 4, the finances now look a lot healthier. £39.7 million in the bank and a transfer budget of £31.4 million. A lot of that was down to the sales of Camara, Fofana and Caio Henrique. We did reinvest some of it back into the playing squad, but the bulk of that overall balance has come from those 3 transfers. Looking at the wage budget, it's now £1.1 million. We're only spending £960,000, so there is a little room in there. Looking at the club vision, we are back to being secure in our job. The actionable objectives are work within the wage budget, on course, sign players to sell for a profit, they're reserving judgment, spend the original transfer budget, they are delighted. In terms of the informational objectives, minimum 4-year contract for first team players, not judging, and then in the 5-year plan, end of next season, be competitive in the Champions League and qualify for it once again. Looking at the board feedback then, we get a B this season. They want to play attacking football, make the most of set pieces, play entertaining football now. They're delighted with the positive atmosphere in the changing room, pleased with the 4-3 Ligue 1 Uber Eats victory over Rennes, and impressed with the 6-1 dismantling of Toulouse. And once again, they are upset about us losing in the cup final. For the supporters, a B. So a very good rapport now with the supporters. We are getting good grades from them. Develop the club's youth system, or players using the club's youth system. Play attacking football, make the most of set pieces and play entertaining football. They want to finish above Nice and Marseille. They pretty much have all the same notable highlights. In terms of the criticisms, Bragança and Guilherme are getting the finger pointed at them. So once again, season 3 has ended with some decent feedback. Can we keep them on side going into season 4? To round off season number 3, we're going to have a little look at the first team and the best 11 before we head into season 4. I'm going to do this in 2 ways as usual. I'm going to show you what I think my best 11 is. We'll then have a look at the assistant report in the squad planner and see if there's any gaps between what I think and what he thinks, and see if there's any areas for improvement that we can pick out by looking at the strengths and the weaknesses. So to kick off my best 11, I would go with Schlager, Salisu, Vallejo, Roholt and Singo. Then moving into midfield for a dynamic trio of Golovin, Esugo and Moscardo. On the left, Guilherme. On the right, Bargy. And up top, Kusi Asare. Kusi Asare and Bargy are now forming the Swedish Assassins, and they are really gunning people down. Look at Kusi Asare, signing across the whole season. He managed to get himself 27 starts, scoring 17 goals. 2 assists and 3 player of the match awards. And across the entire season, he had 23 goals from 33 appearances. Looking at Rooney Bargy then, for this season, he has started to now really develop as a footballer, and he played some outstanding football at times. 34 games, 20 goals, 21 assists in a single league campaign, got him 10 player of the match awards and a 7.75 average rating. Across the season, he played 50 times and scored 25 goals. Looking at Guilherme, you can see that he's starting to develop as a footballer, playing 17 times with 5 goals and 2 assists. Across the season, he played 20 times and got 5 goals. In the middle of the park, Esugo, I show him every single season because he's developing so well as a footballer, and I think that he has bedded himself now into a first team position. We then have Moscardo, who again has come in this season, and he's going to go on to great things, I am sure. Played 30 times in the league with 6 goals and 9 assists, 42 games and 7 goals across all competitions elsewhere. Bit further back, we've got Vallejo, Roholt, Singo and Schlager as those defensive unit, and I think that they also now have built foundations for which we can build upon. If we go into the squad planner then and show you the report and the best 11 from my assistant. So Mr. Yap Stam still thinks it's Schlager, Salisu, Vallejo, Roholt and Singo. So that back four and goalkeeper now match mine. He goes with Moscardo, Gigovic and Golovin. So he wouldn't have a Sugo, he'd play him behind Moscardo, but he'd have Gigovic, which is quite strange considering he's wanted to leave the club for so long. Minamino on the left, Bargi on the right, and Amora Dion at the top of the pitch, and then we got Akusi Asare behind him. If we go into the assistant report to check out the strengths and weaknesses, so in terms of the strengths, aerial reach, best player form, Rooney, Bargi. Youth prospects, kicking is the strength of the goalkeepers. Bargi's 20 strikes ranked him 4th in Ligue 1. Schlager is one of 3 good goalkeepers, and Singo is one of good 3 options at right back. In terms of the weaknesses, not a great deal of depth outside the first team, so it doesn't matter how many players we sign or how much money we spend, we seem to just fall into that trap every single time. Work rate, player struggling for form is Karikaburu. He hasn't played many games, so I can see that he would be struggling. Team isn't the best in terms of teamwork. Squad tend to lack a good corner taker. Not the best in terms of penalties. Not the best in terms of free kick takers. So basically we are rubbish at set pieces, which is one of our actionable objectives. So we need to try and maybe strengthen that in season 4 so we don't fall foul of the board. But in terms of the playing team, I think we just now go down the route of trying to buy 1 or 2 players of quality rather than masses and masses of quantity, because we just can't shake off that overall depth. So we may as well just go with bigger names and fewer of them. So then that brings us to the end of season 3. We have won Ligue 1 Uber Eats with 90 points from PSG. Fantastic there. We also managed to win the Trophée des Champions against PSG. Coupe de France, though, they managed to get their own back. They would win that. And in the Champions League, we had a bit of progress. We got through into the knockout playoff rounds, where unfortunately we were beaten by Bayern Munich. To kick things off, in episode number 4, we're going to have a recap of all of the transfers that happened across season 4, starting things off with the players that have left the club. The first of which was Daniel Bragança. Now, if you cast your mind back when I signed this player, I did say I'm a really big fan of him. The only problem is he is now 27 years old and not going to improve anymore, and the players that we are signing in the middle of the park are now younger players who still have years of development ahead of them. So we signed him for £6 million. We had a bid of 20 come in from Al Tau, and we allowed him to move on. The next player to leave was Robert Bosnick. Tall striker, has gone to London to sign for Fulham. He came in at the same time as Karikaburu, and then Kusi Asare coming in meant that he wasn't going to get the game time that he wanted. He was allowed to go to London. And then the final player to leave is Amos Piper. Now, I know we only signed him the previous season. We paid £6 million for him to get him from Werder Bremen, but £20 million came in from Al Fateh in the Middle East, and we allowed him to move on as it was a no-brainer. So with those 3 players leaving, we had enough money now to start reinvesting in quality. So let's have a look at the players we reinvested in. The first of which was Isaac Johannesson. This is a wonderful footballer. Knew him from Copenhagen, and then he had a move to Fortuna Dusseldorf, went back to parent club Copenhagen, and he has just been playing some fantastic football. I think we paid around £16 million for him. Settled into the middle, plays alongside Golovin with a Sugo behind. Superb footballer. The next player to come in was Nico Paz. Now, this was only a rotation piece. He's a player that is formerly at Real Madrid, can play wide left, can play wide right, can play centrally, but not very comfortably. And he's a player that when we need a cup game rotation, he will be the one to step in. And the final player that we signed in season number 4 is Stanley Nsoki. He's a big, strong centre-back who plays with a powerful game. Strength of 16, balance of 16, aggression of 17, tackling of 14. I think we had to pay around £19 million for him, But if he can break into the first team and make himself a regular, he really has a shot at being a defender or a starting defender for the rest of the save. So that's all the transfer business done. The players that left, the players that arrived. The only question, as always, what impact did they have on the season? Let's have a look at the competitions. To kick off the competitions in season number 4, we played in the Trophée des Champions, and for the second season in a row we would edge out PSG. This time we would win the game 2-1 to win it back to back. In the Coupe de France, as always, we would come in at the 9th round stage. Early on we were drawn against Strasbourg, where we would beat 6-3 in the 9th round. In the 10th round we would play against Marseille, so a tougher opponent. Drew 2-2 in the game and then would go through on penalties. In the 11th round, we would be paired off against Le Havre. We beat them 4-3. In the quarterfinals, we would play against Lille. We would beat them 3-2. Then into the semi-finals, we were paired off against Rennes, who we beat 3-0. The important thing there in the other game was Lyon managed to beat PSG, which meant that we would go into the final and play against Lyon. We would beat them 5-3 to lift the trophy. If you have a little look at the match report, this was a crazy game where everything happened. Teams were pretty much identical, but we were ruthless up front with Johannesson, Kusi Asari and Ben Seguir scoring the goals. Salisu got the other one. So, a second trophy on the season. Can we get any more? Next up is the Champions League, where we go in at the league phase. Now, you might not be able to spot us on the league yet, but scrolling down, we would finish in 22nd place. Didn't really have a good campaign in the Champions League, but managed to get through to the playoff round by the skin of our teeth. We played 8 games. We would win 3 of them, draw 1, lose 4 times, which was to Napoli, Celtic, Dinamo Zagreb and to Chelsea. Had a -5 goal difference, which was really disappointing, and finished on 10 points. But as I said, luckily for us, it was enough to qualify for the knockout playoff round, where we would come against Manchester City, and somehow we would beat them 4-3 across 2 legs. Going on then into the round of 16, and we would come up against PSG. So PSG getting their revenge against us for the Trophée des Champions. They would beat us 5-2 over 2 legs and knock us out in the round of 16. So the last competition for us to look at is Ligue 1, where once again we would go on to become French champions, winning Ligue 1 by 5 points from PSG, and we would finish 11 points ahead of Lens. If we look at our season in depth, 34 games played, 29 of those would be wins, 4 would be draws. We would lose just the once to Lens. We would finish with a 61 goal difference and 91 points. As I said, 5 clear of PSG, 11 clear of Lens. And whatever happened in 4th place, Marseille finished on 59 points, Rennes on 51. So they were nearly 40 points behind us, and I think they were 35 points behind PSG in second. A massive golfing difference between the top 3 and the next best. Looking at some of the stats, Kusi Asare managed to get 31 league goals in a single season, which is phenomenal. Rooney Bargia, 7.6 average rating. He got another 17 assists. Schlager managed to get 13 clean sheets. Moscardo and Singo would get 10 yellow cards each. So, a brilliant season where we would win a treble. We would win Ligue 1, we would win the Coupe de France and the Trophée des Champions. The only thing we cannot crack is the Champions League. But luckily, we're going to have one more season to have a go at that, as winning Ligue 1 puts us back into the Champions League. Fingers crossed for season number 5, that is where we can improve. But a treble is a fantastic result in season 4. A quick look at the finances as we head into season number 5 reveal that the club now have a overall balance of £49.1 million, which crazily means that they're going to allow us to spend £43 million for the final season. In terms of the wage budget, we have £1.4 million and we're only spending £1.2, so there's a nice cushion there for us to work with in the wage budget. Looking at the club vision for the actionable objectives, work within the wage budget, on course, sign players to sell for a profit, pleased. Spend the original transfer budget, they are delighted. They want minimum 4-year contracts now for first team players. By the end of next season, they want to be competitive in the Champions League and qualify for the Champions League as a minimum. We this season get a B+ from the board, and our job security is secure. In terms of the board cultures, play attacking football, make the most of set pieces, play entertaining football, play high tempo pressing football. From the supporters, we also get a B+. Develop players within the club's youth system, delighted. Play attacking football, delighted. Make the most of set pieces, very pleased. Play entertaining football, pleased. Play high tempo pressing football, reserving judgment. In terms of supporters' expectations, finish above Nice in the league and finish above Marseille in the league. So overall, another season with fantastic feedback from both the board and the supporters. To start wrapping up season number 4, we're going to have a look at the first team and what I think is my best 11. We're also going to have a look at the assistant manager's best 11 and see how we match up. So kicking off with my best 11, I would go with Schlager, Salisu, Schmidt, Vallejo and Singo as a back four and the keeper. Then we'd have Moscardo, Johannesson and Golovin as a midfield trio. As I said, that is a bit of a dream trio for this club. On the left is Guilherme, on the right is Bargi, and up top is Kusi Asare. Now, Kusi Asare, you saw, got 31 league goals, but have a look at this for a season. So he did play in 32 league games, scoring 31 league goals. But at the bottom here, he played in 50 games and scored 41 goals in a single season. He's becoming an absolute freak of a striker. He currently has 62 goals in 100 games across all of his league career. He's a player that is developing so well as a footballer. Tall at 6'6", pace of 15, acceleration of 13, strength of 15. This is why he was linked as being the next Zlatan Ibrahimovic. With his height, with his build, with his physical style of game, I can really see with the goal scoring why he would be linked with those kinds of names. Rooney Bargi, as I said, the Swedish Assassins. He has had another fantastic season. Not quite the heights of the previous one in terms of his goal scoring escapades, but 29 games played, 12 goals, 17 assists and 6 player of the match awards, 45 games and 19 goals in all competitions. Guilherme is now playing really well on the left hand side. He didn't start as many games this season as he should have done, but when he did get the chances, he was taking them. 14 appearances, 4 goals, 2 assists, and 16 appearances in all competitions. As I said about Johannesson, really is a silky smooth midfielder, player that really can influence games at any moment, whether it be the first or last minute. Was a no-brainer to get him. Moscardo is playing really well also. 39 games in total across the season. He's played 27 in the league, scoring 5 and assisting 5. He got 6 goals from 39 total appearances across the season overall. So let's look then at what the assistant manager thinks. So our assistant manager has now changed. It is Francisco Fardia, and he goes with Schlager, Salisu, Vallejo, Schmidt and Singo, Moscardo, Johannesson and Golovin, Rego, Bargi and Kusi Asare. So really the only change that I can think there is that Isaac Johannesson and Golovin are the other way around. Joe Rego is on the left instead of Guilherme, but other than that, we pretty much match up spot on. In terms of his report then, top goal scorer, Kusi Asare's 31 strikes, led everyone in the competition. Wage budget is a strength, as I'd already mentioned. Youth prospects, there's still a long list, so we are developing players really well through the club. And then as handling, best player form is Golovin, defensive depth also. In terms of the weaknesses now, gone is the squad depth. It's long shots, penalties, work rate, long throws, bravery. Overall depth is there, but not overall in terms of the squad. We have started to manage to bulk that up. Passing and decisions are the other two. So a few things for the final season where we could go and maybe buy 1 or 2 players with certain attributes, but overall the squad has improved, and I think that really shows when you look at the competitions and the fact that we have won the treble. We got knocked out in the Champions League in the round of 16, so it's still not the best, but to win a second Ligue 1 back-to-back and to win the treble has been absolutely fantastic, and another brilliant season which all builds up to go into the final season. Can we do it again? Can we go one further in the Champions League? Here we go then, this is it. We have finally reached episode number 5. And to kick off episode 5, we're going to go through all of the transfers that happened in season number 5, kicking things off with the players that have left the club. The first of which was Armin Gigovic. He's a player that we signed quite early on in the save. He's actually wanted to get away for a little while now. Couldn't find the right club until Al Fateh came in. They offered us around £20 million, which was a massive profit on what we paid. We took the money and allowed him to go to the Middle East. The only other player to leave was Samuel Nimbombe. He's a player that never made it to the first team, was always in our second team. But when you get £4.5 million for players who've never played for the first team, you probably are going to take the money if you can't fit them into your first 11. And that's exactly what happened there. He was allowed to go to Bruges. So with those two players going and us in the final season, we had money to spend. The first player that we brought in was Filip Stankovic. Now he is coming to be our number 1 goalkeeper. But there's nothing wrong with Schlager in terms of his ability, so to replace him was a little bit harsh. The only problem is Schlager has a real poor injury record and he's never on the pitch. And with the injuries coming in the way they are on FM24, he basically was injured every other week, so we needed a more reliable goalkeeper, and Stankovic was the man, coming in from Inter Milan. The next player to come in was Ernest Poku. He's a player who possesses 16 pace, 17 acceleration, 14 for dribbling and 13 for technique. He also has a flair of 13 and off the ball of 14. He's a player who will frighten defenders when he runs at them. Can also play at the top of the pitch as a striker. As a rotation piece, this was a no-brainer. We just went out and bought him. Can play him in cup games, can play him in league games when he needs to play, and he will do a sound job. And the final player to come in for the save is Armel Bella Kotchap, former Southampton defender who on the game was at PSV, Liverpool, Juventus, and he's one that came to us for I think around £12 million. It wasn't too much money, didn't have to go and break the bank for him, and I really think that he could be, if we were going forwards, a defender at the age of 26 that would still be with us in 5 years' time, and I think he would still have a little bit more of development to come from him. 6'3", good with his jumping reach and heading, obviously, and a sound defender who has played in big leagues. So those are all the players that have departed and the players that have arrived. Did they have the impact? What happened in the final season? To start off the competition roundup, we started our season in the Trophée des Champions. We have won the last 2 of these. Unfortunately for us, we couldn't make it 3 in a row as we came up against PSG, had a dull 0-0 draw in 90 minutes and ended up losing on penalties. In the Coupe de France, as always, we would enter in the 9th round. This time we were paired off against Strasbourg. We would win 3-1 to go into the 10th round. In the 10th round of the Cup, we would play against Saint-Etienne. We would beat them 5-2. That would put us into the 11th round, where we would face off against Lyon. We would beat them 2-1. In the quarterfinals, we would come up against Rennes, and unfortunately Rennes would go on and end our run in the competition, and we would lose 3-1 in the quarterfinals. On to the Champions League, and I can honestly say the Champions League is the one that got away. This will be the one regret from this save that I will have, because I couldn't string it together to get us to where we needed to be. Once again, you can see we are not in the top places, and that's because we finished in 27th and did not get out of the league phase. This time we played in 8 games. We would win 2 of them against Maccabi Tel Aviv and Legia Warsaw. We would draw 2 against Marseille and Bayern Munich, but we would lose 4 against Barcelona, Red Bull Leipzig, Tottenham and Feyenoord. That would leave us on -4 as a goal difference and 8 points. FC Copenhagen and the teams above them finished on 10. So it's a case of so close yet so far, as once again we would go out in the league phase. So that just leaves us with Ligue 1 to look at, and as you can see, we would also fall short in Ligue 1, finishing 8 points behind Paris Saint-Germain, who would go on to reclaim their trophy after we held it for the past 2 seasons. If we break down our season, we played 34 games, we won 23, we had 8 draws, 3 losses, had a goal difference of 42 and finished on 77 points. So even though we finished 8 points behind PSG, we finished 8 points ahead of Marseille, who would finish on 69 points behind us. In terms of the player stats for the goals this season, wouldn't have anybody in the top goals. Kylian Mbappe would go on to win that. In terms of the average ratings, PSG would lock out the top 3 there. In the assists, we had Golovin with 14 and Bargi with 13 this season. And then we had yellow cards, Moscardo and Schmidt getting 11 and 10. So, disappointing really to see that we couldn't go on and win a 3rd Ligue 1 Uber Eats. And the season kind of gone out with a bit of a whimper. We can still hold our heads high for what we've achieved, but I really would have loved it if we could have just gone that extra little mile in season 5. A quick look at the finances then. I know we're not going into a new season, but if we were to have carried over, the board would have had £20 million as an overall balance. The budget at the club would have been £23.9 million, which again is still crazy considering that's more money than they have. The wage budget is £1.9 million and they are spending £1.6 million. So a decent amount there for them to go and sign new players. In terms of the club vision and how we would finish, we'd finish with our job security being secure, a B- on the final season. For the objectives, work within the wage budget, on course, sign players to sell for a profit, satisfied, spend the original transfer budget, delighted, increase commercial revenue has crept in now, because obviously the money that they're getting was coming from transfers, not from winning trophies or from TV deals, those kinds of things. Looking at 4-year contracts for the first team. By the end of next season, they would want to be competitive in the Champions League, qualify for the Champions League. For the board feedback, we get a B-, play attacking football, make the most of set pieces, and play entertaining football, they're delighted or very pleased. Play high tempo pressing football, they are pleased. In terms of notable highlights, 5-3 victory against Marseille, 5-1 humbling of Brest, and they are happy with the quality of pressing using a gegenpress style. Disappointed about the 3-2 loss against Angers. In terms of the supporters, so they are disappointed this season about developing players through the youth team. Play attacking football, delighted. Make the most of set pieces, delighted. Play entertaining football, very pleased. Play high tempo pressing, pleased. Finish above Nice and finish above Marseille, pleased and satisfied. In terms of the highlights there, they're pretty much the same. 5-3 victory against Marseille, Rooney Bargi's recent performances, and the 5-1 defeat of Brest. Then, for the notable criticisms, 2-3 loss against Angers and Filip Stankovic's recent performances. So overall, we have had some decent feedback. The final season, both board and supporters giving us a B-. What have you got to do to get an A? Because we have won trophies. Okay, we fell short in the final season, but I'm pretty sure we've done better than a B-. So to round out the series, we're going to have one last look at the first team and starting 11, and I'll also show you the opinion of the assistant manager if we were going forward, what we would play. So to kick things off, I would go with Stankovic in goal, Salisu, Schmidt, who has developed brilliantly as a footballer, Roel and Singo at the back, Moscardo, Golovin and Johannesson are pretty much a dream 3 in the middle. Then you've got Rego, who's taken over from Guilherme on the left, Bargi on the right, and Kusi Asare up top. If we have a little look at Mr. Kusi Asare, we can see he's now valued at 77 to £111 million. When you consider we paid £11.5 million for him, that is some improvement. Looking across the 3 seasons he spent at the club then, he managed to score 68 league goals in the 3 seasons. He has a strike rate of 82 in 134 across all of the teams that he has played for. On the season, he actually played 45 games and scored 30 goals in total. Looking at some of the other players then, Rego, and see how he's developed. He didn't really get too much first team football in across the seasons that he's been with us 23 to 28, played 109 times. Still only 22 years old. There is definitely still some development there. In terms of Rooney Bargy, another one who is 22 years old, he's played 125 times and scored 62 goals for the club. And if we show you that here, the final season wasn't his best. He had a few injuries here and there, which will kind of limited him to 32 appearances, 9 goals, 13 assists. But when he was on the pitch, he was influential and is definitely a vital part of this team. In terms of Johannesson and his development, he's an outstanding footballer who, at the age of 25, probably won't develop too much more, but there is probably a little bit more that could come out in his development. Then you got Moscardo. He's just, again, the only way I can describe them is fantastic footballers. Age of 22, there is definitely still more improvement to come, and he has played as a midfield general for us. Then, as I said, Schmidt came in quite early on in the save. I bought him mainly to play as a left-back. He has actually carved his way into the first team as a centre-back, so fair play to him. He has got himself a slot in my best 11. If we go into the squad planner and have a little look at the best 11 report then, so he would go with Stankovic, Salisu, Vallejo, Schmidt, Singo, Moscardo, Johannesson, Golovin, Rego, Bargy and Kusi Asare. So not bad to finish us off, and I think that is pretty good in terms of what the team has become. In the assistant report then, so it's top goal scorer is a strength, wage budget, youth prospects, aerial reach, best player form, defensive depth, and the weaknesses are long shots, penalties, communication amongst goalkeepers, teamwork, work rate, free kick taking, leadership. Overall depth is still there, but we are signing players as we go through it. So once again, just to recap the competitions, we would be runners-up in the Trophée des Champions, poor performances in the Coupe de France and in the Champions League, and a second place in the Ligue. If we go to the club info page, let's have a little look at the overview to see the trophies that are there. So 10 Ligue 1 titles now. We won 26 and 27. In the Coupe de France, we won 2027. Coupe de la Ligue, don't think we play in that anymore. Only 2001. So that's there. Trophée des Champions was the other one I was looking for. 25 and 26. So we have had success since we have been at the club. We have improved the team. We have invested the money wisely, built them a playing squad that can go on to bigger and better things, all whilst winning leagues, winning cups. Couldn't crack the Champions League though. That definitely will be the one that got away. But it's been a fantastic time in Monaco. 5 years building that team, playing some absolutely fantastic football, switching to the 4-3-3, really advanced this team. So if you want to play as Monaco, I will have a video on the 4-3-3 tactic. You can plug it in and have a go for yourself. But I think it's pretty much time to say goodbye to Monaco. It's been a blast, and I hope you've enjoyed the series. Right then, if you're still with me at this point of the video, firstly, a big thank you. Secondly, if you don't mind hitting the like and subscribe button to help the channel out, I really do appreciate it. I cannot thank you all enough for supporting the channel across the past couple of months. It really has been great to watch. Before you go, don't forget to check out, there's other things on the channel. Hints, tips, tutorials, Wonder Kids, Let's Plays, a little bit of something for everybody on the channel. But for this one, I'm going to leave it there. Big thank you for watching the Monaco series. I'll see you on another video very soon.